This opportunity, I believe that it is necessary for every department to have good press relations. Like you, I believe that the public has got the right to be informed about what is going on in a department, especially like mine, where we're using the taxpayers' money. And I welcome an opportunity like this today. It is difficult, of course, to speak in front of people with perhaps different interests and perhaps with a different background and knowledge of the subject that you are touching on. I think that black education came to the fore very much after June 16, year before last. It is understandable. It was the focal point, people with different colors, and that in itself, I think, made the world more aware of our situation than in any other country would have been the case. I came to Soweto on the 2nd of September, I think, of that particular year, when this part of black education was made a separate region. I think the mere fact that it was made a separate region is an acknowledgement from the educational authorities, at least, that here we have a unique problem, that we are dealing with a sophisticated, urbanized people whose needs may be different from that of the rural areas. Cool. And it seemed as if they had no intention whatsoever of writing their examinations. After deliberations with school boards, principals, all the schools that were reopened so far are functioning absolutely normal. And that at the primary schools level, there is no problem whatsoever. Now, with this as background, Mr. Chairman, I would welcome any questions.
Thank you.
If there is something to be elucidated.
Yes?
Do you still have policemen at the schools, and why?
Every day of my life. I have so far not met with particular student groups. If you mean by that they represent a specific organization, that I have not done. But in the course of my work, I see students every day of my life, and I talk to them. And those of you who have been out with me will know what I'm talking about. But you see, you must have a line of communication with pupils and students. You can't work on the trade union system. Each school has its own form of administration in which the students, of course, play a part. There are prefects at that particular school representing the wishes of the children, and they work through their principal, through their inspector to me. And if necessary, I speak to prefects or I speak to a whole school, but I am in daily contact with the pupils in Soweto.
Now that you have a partially current situation in the schools, is there any major change scheduled to the Bantu?
Communicate with each other much better than when they come back to school. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, surely. I can only say that Mr. McHenry has got information that I don't possess. That's all I can say. I don't think that thousands of parents would bring their children to school if that was the intention of the children. I can't believe that.
Do you think you'll change the name from Bantu education, such as Dr. Mulder has changed his department to plural relations? Is there any, are you going to do that?
Yes, well, it was said more than 2 years ago by the secretary of my department that he was prepared to change the name, and he called for suggestions. And now our department is going to change from the Department of Bantu Education to the Department of Education and Training, which verily we are. It is the Department of Education and Training. What? So, but you see, to change the name formally, the act will have to be looked at and changed accordingly. And the Prime Minister himself said that it was his intention to look into the act, to change it if necessary, and to make all the necessary changes for progress. Now people keep on calling for a declaration of intent. Now where can you find a better declaration of intent as this one coming from the Prime Minister himself?
What changes, if the act is reviewed, what changes would you recommend?
Well, there are very little changes that I would recommend because I am in a position to implement what I think is necessary. I don't find the act an obstacle to teach properly.
Don't you think it's important to try to bring the teachers back into the fold now? And how successful have you been?
Oh yes, I think it's very important to bring the teachers back, but it is also very important, first of all, for the teachers to give their declaration of intent to come back. And as I've said to you, those that have done so, I am already taking them up. I have appointed quite a number of them already as we need them. And as we go along, we will absorb, I think, everybody who is willing to come back to the profession.
The teachers who come back also have been established.
But we've got an institution of higher education. We've got a teacher training college, which is most essential. With the last question first, of course you must remember I speak only for Soweto. In Soweto, there isn't a discrepancy in the teacher-pupil ratio. As a matter of fact, I'm rather very proud of my teacher-pupil ratio. Before the kids walked out last year, in senior secondary schools it was 1 to 19, in junior secondary schools 1 to 32, and overall 1 to 40. Now, that is, in my book, just as good as that of my white sister department. The different...
Sorry, if I mean the average
in all schools.
in all white schools is about 1 to 22.
Yes, well, that is what they say, but if you take this thing factually and you go into classes in white schools and you count them, then I would like to see these classes where you have one teacher standing in front of 22 kids, unless it is a school for the very rich or a special sort of school. But I can assure you that even in white education, and those of you that know this country will know what I'm talking about, it is nothing strange to find a matric class from 35 up. And I know what I'm talking about because I taught them myself. I had one matric class of 42. But you see, the teacher-pupil ratio is worked out in such a way that an education department will take all its professional staff, and then they will take the number of kids and divide them by the number of professional staff. And that is quite a different picture from what you find in the classroom itself. Now, as far as the spending is concerned, first of all, I want to go on record, Mr. Chairman, as saying that I believe that every child should get the same treatment in education. Let's make no mistake about that. I think every educationist will agree with me there. And but the present system is unfortunately that the figures that I gave you will give you an example of what I'm talking about. Primary school education is much less expensive than secondary school education. Now, if I give you figures of 27,000 against 150,000, then you will understand that in black education is heavily weighted on the primary school side at the moment, which is the cheapest side. That is the first point that we should consider. The second point is that teachers, of course, in this country are not paid on the same scale. But even if they were, the black teacher, on average, has a much lower qualification than his white brother. And that is why the difference is so great. If we could overnight bring up the qualifications of the black teachers to the same as that of their white colleagues, then this figure would look much, much different. Because you must remember that when we work out the per capita expenditure, we are only taking into consideration salaries and expendables, such as books and laboratory equipment, for instance. Now, you know that all along my department did not supply free books. It is only a few years back that we started this system. So this in itself will bring, in the new financial year, will bring a change. But then also, you must remember that, as I said, all expenditure for